United Hour, your one-stop shop for all things Manchester United. I'm your host, Nik.
And I'm Imran.
Two of us here to talk about two cup games with very contrasting finishes for Manchester United. Last time we were recording, we were on the back of 3 league wins in a row. We were feeling pretty upbeat after getting our kind of top 4 race back on track. But yeah, this last couple of games is all about the cups. Obviously, we went away to Sevilla, who are our Spanish bogey team and continue to be. And then we had the Wembley final against Brighton on Sunday. So we're recording this actually on Tuesday. So we've had a couple of days to think about everything. Imran, should we start with the good news or the bad news?
I think let's start with the good. Because there's a lot to talk about Thursday. But I think the good is better.
Yeah, the Sunday and FA Cup semi-final at Wembley, our second visit to Wembley. We will, of course, now have a third visit after coming through. I mean, you wouldn't say it was a classic game. Although, actually, I wouldn't actually say it was quite a kind of good cup game. Just an even game, back and forth, pretty even. I mean, a lot of people went into this match expecting the worst. I don't know about you, Imran.
I mean, I was expecting the worst. I didn't think we'd win. The only thing I would say is usually after we've lost this season, apart from the first 2 games, we've bounced back quite well. So we had that in our favour. And that is actually a good testament to this team when we have lost, especially the bad ones, Liverpool, City, and that Sevilla game, which I would put up there as one of definitely the bad ones of the season. We've responded quite well as a team. We've shown a bit of resilience. Obviously, in an ideal world, you don't get that loss in the first place. But, you know, if when you do lose, you respond like that, then that's something to hold your hat onto. And actually, I thought it was a good game. I really did. There was like 30 shots in the game, I think. I thought it was a case of both teams actually playing quite well. Especially
often, when you see 0-0, you think, oh, it's a boring game if somebody hasn't seen the match. But actually, like you say, even though it was 0-0, it was quite an interesting game. There was a lot going on. Some chances for both ends. So yeah, I would actually say it was a really good cup semi-final.
Yeah, I think maybe because we're more invested in it as well, it appeals more to us. But yeah, I mean, there was some good defending and midfield from both teams. It kind of went in waves. They had 20 minutes, we had 20 minutes. They had 50 minutes, we had 15 minutes. It kind of fell into a pattern. But there's some good standout performances from both sides. I think it showed that neither team really had that much going on up top. But yeah, it was a good game. And I don't think either team necessarily did enough to deserve to win. So penalty is probably the right result. And whoever wins on penalties, then fair enough. And luckily it was us.
And yeah, rare to be us as well. I wasn't super confident going into this game, obviously, because of the bad result against Sevilla. And then the big question mark going into the match was who was going to play centre-back. Because being without Martinez, being without Varane, we'd already had Lindelof and Maguire struggle midweek. And now we knew Maguire was going to be suspended as well. I didn't know whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, just because we were down to literally the bare bones. But I think in the end, it was a good thing, right?
Yeah, well, it was a good thing in the end. Lindelof seems to play a lot better without Maguire, which is harsh on Maguire maybe. And I hate to kick the man when everyone else does. But I mean, Lindelof was might have been Lindelof's best ever game for us. I've not gone trawling through the catalogue of Victor Lindelof performances, but this definitely was an immaculate performance from him. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Often doing the stuff as well that he's not famous for. He was aggressive, pushing out, getting tight to players, making challenges, winning headers, like the things that you don't really put in Lindelof's corner, he was actually doing. And I thought Shaw's just a terrific footballer when he's on it, and he was on it on Sunday. And left centre back, left back. Honestly, if you said to me which one player would you happily put in any position on the field, I'd say Luke Shaw. You'd put Luke Shaw in any position on the field, and he'd probably do a really good job because he's just a tremendous footballer.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to get Shaw and Rashford back in the team, even though, Rashford didn't have maybe his best game and he's still getting back to full fitness. But just to have them back available was a major boost. It was the probably only bright spark of that Thursday night calamity in Seville that those two came and had some
Luke
minutes.
Shaw was hobbling around for the last 20 minutes of that game. So that looked a bit ropey. But then obviously nothing, maybe just an impact thing, nothing major in that. And yeah, he played the full 120 and seemed to be fine. So yeah.
And I mean, and going back to Lindelof, it was kind of interesting that Ten Hag decided to switch around Maguire and Lindelof. In the past, they played together a lot under Ole. Maguire was on the right, Lindelof was on the left. He kind of switched them around. And I don't know whether that was part of how Lindelof did pretty well in the semi-final, because he was back on the right side, because Luke Shaw obviously is more comfortable on the left. I did think Lindelof struggled slightly with their forward. I think Uruguayan he is, and Cisco. Brighton seemed to just pick out these players from nowhere for nothing, and then instantly turn into like Premier League stars.
To be fair, he was in the hole though. He was number 10, wasn't he? So he was kind of dropping off and picking up spaces.
Yeah, he was. But every time he'd kind of get the ball and he'd look to go on the turn, and there was a couple of times Lindelof had to foul him, and he did get a yellow. Thankfully, he didn't go any further than that. I mean, that was another thing I wanted to mention. I thought the referee was a joke, kept giving us yellows, and some of their players had foul after foul after foul. I mean, how Webster didn't get a yellow card in this game was absolutely mental. But yeah, he wasn't the only one either.
Oh yeah, that was ridiculous. I think I imagine Brighton will get a bit more leniency because of all the apologies they've had from now towards the end of the season. I can live with it as long as it's not the major decisions. There was no major penalties or red cards or anything, so fine. The Casemiro tax is annoying at this point. Casemiro will get bookings for things that other players just don't get bookings for. He gets red cards for other things that people get yellow cards for. So it's annoying at this point, but I guess something we have to live with. I thought Mitoma actually was a little bit lucky. I would not like. I will say I would not want to see him get sent off for it. To be fair, that was one of our players. I would definitely not want to see you get sent off for a challenge on the keeper. But he was a bit lucky in that it was a very late challenge, a slide challenge on the keeper. And if you go by what yellow card was in that game, that kind of was a yellow card. I'm not saying that I want him to be sent off for that, but a bit lucky. But yeah, Webster should have got a booking way earlier on. But overall, I mean, the fact that Lindelof is making that foul, he's tight enough to make that foul, is a good thing, you know? He's getting up, he's being aggressive, not just backing off and waiting for things to happen around him. He's making things happen. So yeah, I thought it was a great display from the both of them. Also kind of helped with like how Brighton play. Brighton are intricate on the floor, tippy-tappy passy, not really like brute in your face. No one's wanging balls into the box kind of thing. And that probably might be where Luke Shaw and Victor Lindelof might have fallen down if they were that kind of team. But yeah, no, they played well.
No, they actually had more possession than us. They were like 60% for them, 40% for us.
Yeah, well, the game was to let them have their possession, let them do the pass, and we can counter punch. And it kind of makes sense. You know, Brighton are playing very well. They're in a good moment. We're not in the best moment. We're not in the best of form. We're a bit leggy. They're not leggy. Had a full week. We've had a game in Spain 3 days ago. To expect us to control the game. I know people would like us to control the games all the time, but I mean, sometimes you've got to be realistic, especially when you've got your starting centre-back pairing out. So I was fine with it. You know, I think there's different ways to skin a cat, and we just went for the one that made sense in this game, and I was totally fine with it. Ultimately, it got the job done, albeit on penalties. I think a lot of people were upset about the fact that De Gea was pumping it long pretty much every opportunity. But again, it doesn't bother me that much.
I'm not upset about that at all. Like, no. Obviously we'll talk about Thursday night, and that has been the biggest issue. Is sometimes it's the right thing to do is to go long. Sometimes you might want to play out from the back, but the times when you play out from the back and it's the wrong choice, it actually costs you massively, and it's a big risk. It's a big gamble. As I've said on this podcast, I do generally play centre back nowadays when I'm playing football, and I'm very much old school philosophy of do not take any gambles, get it out of a dangerous area if you need to be. Of course, football has moved on, and nowadays people try and pass out from the back, try and do something more intricate. 10 years ago, well, maybe 20 years ago, it was just, listen, if you're a centre-back, get it out of this dangerous area and let's see what happens up front with that ball. But yeah, I'm always nervous, more, and not just because of the style of play and the kind of new tactical way. It's because I don't think the likes of De Gea, all right, Maguire wasn't playing in this game, are the ones who should be the ones for playing out from the back.
I mean, I get why people are annoyed. You want us to be the possession team who control it, and also that is the Erik Ten Hag thing, is to control play, control the ball at all times. But I mean, consider personnel, consider the game that De Gea had on Thursday, consider the fact that this was a back four that's never played together before, consider the fact that Brighton are pressing monsters, and again, the fresher team. I mean, sometimes, yeah, get it long, try it, mix it up a bit. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, Pep, there's been games for City where Pepper's long, not many, but they have happened just to avoid a press. And it can work for a game and it can make sense. Will we do this every game? Absolutely not. We'll go back to games, especially at home. I'm sure we'll have De Gea passing out from the back and service will be resumed. But for this game, I had no problem with it. It just avoided that first Brighton counter press, and it meant that we could win the ball in midfield with Casemiro, with Bruno, less so with Eriksen. I thought Eriksen wasn't his best day, but you win the ball in midfield and you press on from there. And to be honest, we won the ball high up the pitch a couple of times in that first half, and that's why we got our key chances, especially with Bruno.
Yeah, and chances were generally about equal. Like I say, Brighton had more of the play. I think there was 15 shots from both teams, and we actually had slightly more on target, 6 versus 5. So yeah, slightly in our favour. The XG was in Brighton's favour. Well, after 90 minutes, they were at 1.2. We were at 0.8. So it was slightly in their favour.
Yeah, it was that Danny Welbeck header was the big one, wasn't it? That was a big chance for them. And for us, it was really that Eriksen chance, which he didn't really get connected on. That was a good chance, especially for someone like Eriksen. Had a lot of time to hit that ball. And then the Bruno one right at the end, but it was a bad angle. But these are all like half chances, I guess.
And it was, there was a question on Martial wasn't happy that Bruno hadn't passed it to him for kind of a tap in, but I think Bruno was probably entitled to have a go from there.
Yeah, I think so.
De Gea did make a couple of saves, to be fair to him. As I say, we will talk about the Sevilla, which was very bad. So he made a couple of important saves for us. As I said, going into the penalty shootout, I had very low expectations. Forget what it is now. We won only 1 out of the last 8, or is it? I think we won 1 out of the last 8.
And
it was a lovely stat against Rochdale with Roberto Sanchez in net.
Crazy. I mean,
one of those crazy stats that comes around, 4 years later for him to play the same team in a Wembley semi-final and lose again. That's going to be a killer for him.
I mean, the thing about that was everything was against us there. Wrong side was the Brighton side. We were going second.
I think they won. They must have won both tosses.
They won both tosses because De Gea was a bit. I saw it on TV. De Gea was confused. He's like, "Why are we going there?" And they're kicking first. He's like, "Well, there's 2 tosses." They're like, "David, did you miss one of the tosses? What was going on?" So all that going against us. De Gea in net, not the most famous penalty saver in the world. Although I will, not to defend him per se, but I'll give him a slight bit of leeway in the fact that all their penalties were very good. They were very good. All our penalties were very good as well, apart from the Sabitzer one. But even that was good because he was going high. So if you get a hand to it, there's still a good chance it goes in the net. And you will say that, yeah, he dived the wrong way, but you don't know how many of those penalties are actually sending him the wrong way. And if he went the other way, they'd pop the ball in the other corner kind of thing. It's not that they're just picking that corner and going for it. They are sending the keeper the wrong way, a lot like the Casemiro penalty, for example, for us. So I'll give him a little bit of leeway on that, but obviously he's not the best penalty saver in the world. So the fact that their miss came from a solid match, blasting it over the bar was probably apt.
I mean, I would say that there were very good penalties from both teams. In fact, it reminded me of, another bad memory, that Europa League final loss on penalties.
All these penalties, well, not all, a lot of our recent penalty shootouts is we've scored a lot of penalties.
Yeah, in that one, remember, it went all the way to goalies. It was De Gea who actually missed, but it went all the way to goalies. Great penalties from both teams, and, unlucky to miss them again here. Both sides taking very good pens.
The one before that, I think it was like Elanga in the 7th penalty, wanged it over the bar or something. I think that was the miss there. So we got good penalty takers. It's just the penalty saving that's the issue. And apparently,
and I think you're actually a bit kind to De Gea in saying he's not the best penalty saver. I think if the stats show he's actually one of the worst of the top level goalies of how many penalties he's saved. His percentage is literally the worst of any top level keeper for a long time.
Apparently Jack Butland is worse. Apparently at saving penalties. So
I don't count him as a top level keeper.
We need to trade heat and save penalties. That's what we need to do for the final. But ultimately we scored all ours.
Who were you most worried? Who were you most worried about when they stepped up for us?
Weghorst.
Yeah. For me, Weghorst, and then Lindelof as well when he came up just for that vital one.
Lindelof scored an excellent penalty in the Europa League final. I remember it because I was worried about him in the Europa League final, and he put away a very nice penalty. And then Luke Shaw stepped up after him. He took a terrible penalty in that final, did Luke Shaw? So I remember that, and I'm thinking, if Luke Shaw steps, I'm probably a bit worried. But I wasn't worried about Victor. I was a bit worried about Vaux, but apparently he took some nice ones for Netherlands in the World Cup. And again, he was one of the ones that sent the keeper the wrong way. And again, Sanchez looks a bit foolish going the wrong way, but it's because Vaux sending him the wrong way. And then obviously he did his little ball kissing voodoo on March, and then that was that.
Yeah. And yeah, a bit of a shout out for Jadon Sancho. He's taken some kind of criticism. I mean, I think you were at Old Trafford, the day I was, it was that. And he got a lot of criticism from the crowd. It was actually that first leg Sevilla. The crowd were really getting on his back. And, initially everybody was supporting him when he came back from that kind of strange break that was still never quite explained, but obviously had something going wrong mentally. And everybody was happy to see him back. He's had a couple of half decent performances. But lately, he's not been quite hitting it. He didn't start this game. I don't think he deserved to. But for him to put away a penalty at Wembley, because if people forget, he missed a penalty at Wembley for England in Euro 2020. And that for him he probably hasn't taken a penalty since then, has he?
No, I don't think he would have done.
So for him to step up again at Wembley with those memories and put away a very nice penalty was great to see.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I am the first person in the queue to criticize Sancho, who I think has largely been absolutely useless for us. But I'll give him credit where it's due. It was a very well taken penalty, and he actually wasn't useless when he came on in this game. I thought he actually looked a bit bright than usual, and I thought he was absolutely dreadful on Thursday for that first half, and was rightly taken off at half time. But yeah, fair play to him. And the other one, who I can't really criticize anymore because he's really turned it around, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who was absolutely brilliant again. Just in terms of locking down their threatening left winger, who is Matoma, who's very good. Stats this season are incredible. Talk of a big move, we'd be in for him. I wouldn't be opposed to that. And he just absolutely shut him down. Brilliant. You can't. And the thing is, he obviously did used to do this in the past, but then he also combines it now with actually being a real footballer as well. He's not just sliding
going forward.
He's actually contributing in the football sense as well, and that's kind of what you want to see. So yeah, I thought he was tremendous. Him, Shaw, and Lindelof, tremendous.
So we will take a quick break there, come back, finish off talking about this, and then unfortunately we do have to go to the bad news part of this podcast. Back for part 2 of the podcast. So yeah, you were talking about Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I did want to say that I saw a stat thrown out there today, and he is literally the best tackling defender in the world right now. There was a stat of kind of successful tackle rate, and it was everybody in like the top 5 leagues, and it went back about 4 years. It wasn't just this season. It was going back like about 4 years, and he has the best tackle success rate in the world in football right now. He gets a lot of criticism, and I think a lot of people, me included, thought he'd probably played his last minutes for Manchester United. He didn't feature at all up until Christmas, and has then come in and had this battle with Dalot. It slightly reminded me of, remember when we had Marwan Fellaini, who got a lot of stick, and we're always like, but he's the world-class chess control.
His chess control was incredible.
Chess controller of all time. And then I was like, all right, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he's got this in his locker. He is the best slide tackler in world football today.
He's genuinely world-class at it. Marwan Fellaini literally had hands on his chest and would catch the ball with his chest hands. Marwan Fellaini has big, fat spider legs that can just tackle anyone. But he always was, to be fair. And even through all our criticisms, he genuinely is a world-class tackler. But it's the fact that he now contributes it with incisive runs. He's coming into midfield to actually play football. He did that run in the second half, which he took on about 3 players, which was absolutely fantastic. Like, he's actually been a real footballer now, and he's rescued his career to the point where you wouldn't want to see him sold in the summer. I wouldn't. I would be totally happy with him staying. He is our first choice right back, I think. I mean, Dalot was actually quite good in this game. He's actually playing a bit better at left back recently, but yeah, I would be happy for him staying. I genuinely would not have said that this time last summer. Genuinely wouldn't have.
Yeah, no, it is great to see. There's been a few players who've had a really great redemption this season. Marcus Rashford is one as well. He didn't have the best game here, but it's good to see him back in the team, to see some of these players who a lot of fans wrote off to come back and not just playing okay, absolutely smashing it is brilliant. So yeah, we are going to be going back to Wembley for this final. We'd had a chat on this podcast several times saying what's more important, the FA Cup, the Europa League, and we were kind of going back and forth on it for several months. Anyway, now that question is taken out of our hands.
Well, I always did say that FA Cup. I always did say that City in the FA Cup final is more important than
you did.
If it's City, I always said if City's in the FA Cup final, that is more important than the Europa League, and it has turned out that way. And actually, rewriting history a little bit, but losing to Sevilla, probably a blessing in disguise, because we do not have those European games coming up to that final. And if we're in that Europa League final, I'm pretty sure it's 3 days before the FA Cup final.
It is, plus that travel in between, plus that quick turnaround.
Where is it?
And yeah, I've said for months now that we cannot deal with this schedule. We cannot go all the way. And I was worried that if we kind of keep going all the way, we could end up losing 2 finals and missing out on top 4 because we're trying to juggle everything. So in the end, we're not going to have those Europa games. So it is that kind of slight blessing, especially when we're playing City in that final, especially when we can stop them going for that treble. Somebody, a friend of mine, reminded me, I mean, this is even before my time. I know I am the old man of this podcast, but yeah, 1977, Manchester United won the FA Cup final against Liverpool to stop them being the first ever team to win the treble. And now, 1999, we were the first team to do it. It now rolls round again that Manchester City are currently on for that, although they've still got a way to go in both the league and the Champions League. So yeah, they're not actually guaranteed any of those 3 things, but they do have the potential to win those. So if we can go into that final and make that difference, it will be brilliant. I mean, a lot of our fans are not so confident about it. We will obviously talk a lot more when we get towards that final. But I think a lot depends on what kind of team we can put out. I don't know if we have any chance of getting Varane back by that game. We know Martinez is out. It's only quite a lot of our players are kind of back now. It is only that centre-back partnership that's still a bit of a worry.
I can see Varane being back for it. Definitely see Varane. I mean, it is over a month away. So, and Varane's been out for
hopefully,
a week
if we can
now,
get somebody like him back, I would feel a lot more confident.
Yeah.
Also, a shout out to go on.
I just say, plus the rest time is going to be massive between games. We're not going to look so leggy, and that not playing a Europa League final 3 days before is huge for this game. I mean, the amount you put into a Europa League final against whoever it is, and then to come back and play against City at Wembley in 3 days, that is a big ask. So the fact that that's not there in the calendar, I do have some hopes for this game. It's going to be tight, obviously, and we'll have to be on our best game. But yeah, I've got some big hopes for it.
And yeah, shout out to Man United women who are also going to Wembley for their first ever cup final. They also beat Brighton in the semi-final and will play Chelsea in their cup final. I will actually be going to that women's cup final. Still have to wait to see if I'm definitely getting a ticket for the men's one. But yeah, we'll be going to the women's cup. And yeah, let's hope for the best. Both teams heading to the FA Cup final. Like I say, for the women, it's the first time ever they're getting that far. And the women are actually on for a League and Cup double, potentially.
Over Chelsea as well. Yeah. That would be as well.
Yeah, exactly. Both of those, Chelsea are the kind of rival for both those over there. So unfortunately, we do have to go to the bad news part of this podcast. We do have to talk about a horrific Thursday night horror show. Imran, go and talk about Thursday night for me. For a sec.
So it was a shambles, really, wasn't it? And I did have this lingering feeling that this would happen after that 2-2 draw at Old Trafford. Just the manner of that draw as well, really, because we were cruising. It was all good. 85 minutes. Didn't look for the world like we'd be losing. We should have really scored a third and a fourth and should have been put to bed. And then the unthinkable happened with Malacia making a terrible mistake, and then an own goal, and then Maguire with the own goal, and at 2-2. And I know Colm was on here last week, and Colm actually did reassure me, to be fair. He did reassure me when he said, you know what, they could only score because of own goals. Like, they are not a very good side. We will create. And he, because after the game, and he said it on this pod, me and Jamie were like, that is it for this game. We are not in this game at all. We are out now. That is it. It's done. The manner of that draw and going back to there, we are not going through. And Colm reassured me. He said, you know what, we're a better side. Their goals are freaks. What he didn't count on was 3 more completely freak goals. I started a thread on Red Cafe about this. I have never in my life seen 5 completely freak goals like that in a tie. Never. I mean, the most normal goal they scored was a goal that hit a man's shoulder and went looped in off the bar. That was the most normal, which De Gea probably should have saved. That was their most normal goal. If that is your most normal goal out of 5, then something weird is happening. And we did not deserve to win at all. We are rightfully out of that competition. Sevilla are rightfully through. Even though we dominated the first leg for 85 minutes, it means nothing if you capitulate like that and then turn out that performance. In Spain, you deserve nothing. But my God, the hoodoo they have in that competition, it's something else. It's miraculous, the voodoo magic they wield, because you've never to have one mistake, like you remember Nick Hancock and his football bloopers.
Yeah.
Like to have one get on there would something. We could have you could have all 5 of those goals on there. I mean, and that's you've never seen a mistake like that first one. And then only to be topped off by whatever De Gea was doing for the third one. Absolutely madness. But yeah, we didn't deserve anything. It was terrible. And the thing is,
unfortunately, I will say, unfortunately, we have seen a mistake like the first one. It's not the first time. We still go back to was it the first or second game of the season against Brentford? Yeah.
But that was different because Eriksen got the ball and he was robbed of the ball. So Eriksen got the ball under high pressure and he was robbed of the ball. He didn't he was literally tackled in possession. Maguire calls for the ball in quite a lot of space, gets the ball in a fair bit of space, and is not hassled to get the pass away. He gets a clean pass away. That's why I feel like people saying, "Oh, De Gea is just as much at fault." No, Maguire is professional. Do not be easy on Harry Maguire. He's a professional footballer. He can deal with that situation. He can turn out. He can pass it back to De Gea. He can blast it into God knows where. There's so many things he can do apart from not pass it straight to their man. Yes, De Gea has.
I think they're both equally to blame there. Both utter morons for this. If that had been the first time this had happened to De Gea, I probably would have put it more on Maguire. But because he's done this more than once before, I say, listen, he's not always picking the right decision. Although you are right that Maguire asks for that ball, so it's not totally. But
and
listen,
he is in space.
They're both morons.
It's not like he was not in space. He was in. He had about 10 yards of space all around him. Martinez gets that ball once per game probably, and deals with it. Yes, Martinez is a better footballer than Maguire, but De Gea should have. Well, he probably should, but you can't think, oh well, Maguire's not very good, so I'm not going to pass it to him. Yes, he should pass to Wan-Bissaka, but Maguire should be able to deal with that. And when you're doing that in the first, 10 minutes of the game, then it's not going to be a good night for you, is it?
Yeah, and I was watching this game in Morocco. I was out there for work, as I often am, and the cafe I was watching it in were fully supporting Moroccan players on the pitch. There was 2 Moroccan players playing for Sevilla, Bono in net and then Nesri up front. So yeah, it was a very partisan cafe who were the atmosphere was good for a neutral, not for me to sit there watching it go down straight away. And then, we didn't play well at all. I mean, and it wasn't only the centre back. I think Bruno missing obviously was a big miss for us as well. Sabitzer kind of took that role, didn't hit it well. Eriksen, I think, as well, is still getting back to full fitness. You can see some of that passing range in there, but it's nowhere near the kind of level he was playing at the start of the season. I think he's still a little bit off 100%. And it was in this game that it really all started to show. As soon as we have 2 or 3 players out, the big difference was a bit of a killer for us.
Yeah, it was a massive killer. Everyone was poor, so you can't really single anyone out. It was just a shambles all around. And then, I mean, like I said, in hindsight, now that we know that we're in the FA Cup final, it's probably a good thing. We can now concentrate on the league. I think we need 4 more wins in the league to really cement top 4, which we should be able to do. We have 4 home games anyway. So you win all your home games, you're into the Champions League, and you would take that. And plus, we could probably pick up some points away from home as well. So I'm not too worried. But I think now that we're not in the Champions League, that feels a lot more. No, sorry, not Champions League, Europa League. Europa League is the main European competition. Obviously, that's why we're talking about it like this. It's the league feels a bit better, but it's just the manner of the defeat really that really angers you. To go down so feebly, and not for the first time this season. I said at the beginning of the pod, it's good that we respond to these terrible losses, but these terrible losses are truly awful, and we need to know why we're losing so badly. And it's not good enough that after someone says, "Oh, they wanted it more." That's great. You can tell us how many times they wanted it more, but why is this happening constantly? So that's something that needs to be sorted out and addressed. I think we lost to that Arsenal game 3-2. That's the only one loss I could think. Fair enough. We didn't lose that in a ridiculous manner. You know what I mean? All the rest of our losses are just shambolic mostly.
Yeah, it has been a recurring theme away from home to have not just losses, but complete capitulation again and again and again this season. And it's definitely going to be something that Erik ten Hag has to look at and focus on and work out why. It's not completely clear why. I mean, I personally put a lot of it down to a lack of on-pitch leadership. I still think we have an issue about captaincy, and especially, when you go down in a game away from home, to get your players going, to make sure that doesn't go from 1-0 to 2-0 to 3 to 4. That is about on-pitch leadership, to knowing, saying, listen, let's make sure this isn't an embarrassment. And sometimes, we can't blame Bruno for this game because he wasn't even playing. But I think sometimes a player like Bruno, he starts going more for that Hollywood ball. He starts really trying to get back into it in that kind of way, rather than trying to just take a step back and make sure it's not going to the worst case. He starts going a bit too much to try and get back into it because he is that kind of player, basically. And that's sometimes why question marks over whether he is the right leader for us. But at the moment, we shall see. We're talking about Maguire, we're talking about Lindelof. You would expect that at least one of those players does leave this summer, if not both. I don't know where they're both at. I would happily actually keep even Maguire. I would keep him as a squad player if he was happy to.
It's just the money you leave on the table if you keep Maguire. You're leaving
These are players that we should be able to get. Yeah, that's it. These are players that we should be able to get a decent amount of money for. At the moment, our ownership situation is still very up in the air. There's no great kind of updates on what's going on there. In fact, worryingly, there's more and more news about the Glazers finding ways to refinance and stay, which will then put big question marks on what exactly our summer budget is and whether we're relying on selling players to be buying players. And then you'd think that maybe Maguire is a player that we can cash in on. And I don't know, maybe somebody like Newcastle can give us back most of the money we paid for him or something like that. But even Lindelof should be able to bring in a pretty decent fee. He's a Swedish international.
But I think he's shown that he can actually be our third choice centre-back.
As I say, if either of them are happy to stay, I don't know if they'll be happy to stay, because it's this season that they're shown quite clearly the first choice is Varane and Martinez, and maybe even the third choice is Luke Shaw. Maybe they're even kind of fighting for the fourth choice, Lindelof and Maguire. And whether they're happy with that, I don't know. We have to see what happens in the summer.
But if you're our third choice centre back, you're getting a lot of games because of Varane situation. And the issue they both have is that the other exists at the moment. I think if you said to one of them, you're definitely our third choice centre back, they would probably get a lot of games. If you totaled up Lindelof and Maguire's games together this season, when they haven't played together but played, I think you probably get quite a lot. I think so. Yeah, I think there's a lot of.
Well, it was actually quite interesting that we'd had this bit of debate about who is higher in the pecking order for Erik ten Hag between Lindelof and Maguire. And I said Maguire because I thought he'd started more games for us, whereas Lindelof had tended to come in for sub. If you actually look at the minutes played, it's very close. And Lindelof is actually slightly ahead on minutes played this season, even though he's had more minutes from the bench and Maguire's had more starts. He's actually played more minutes in total. But I think they're about equal. It's not that clear who is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if they were just one man, you'd think there's quite a lot of minutes to be had for that one man. So I can see Lindelof staying and I can see Maguire going. What I do find interesting is who's going to start that FA Cup final and whether it's going to, if Varane is back, will it be Varane and Shaw? Will it be Varane and Lindelof? And if Varane isn't back, I can still see it being Lindelof and Shaw.
I guess we have to wait and see nearer the time who exactly is available and who's on form.
Thank you for listening to United Hour. Remember to follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at United_Hour. Please take the time to leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. United Hour is brought to you by the Sports Social Network, and our theme song is by Ancient Feelings. To get in touch, please email unitedhour@gmail.com.